Hello everyone, I'm Alon, I'm from Spain, I'm a senior and this is my Wilson Scholars French project. This is the title of my project, Boarding Schools, a Favorite Destination for French-speaking international students. For my project, I decided that I wanted to interview French native boarding school students or students whose first language was French, because I wanted to get to know a little bit more about their feelings regarding like the process of obtaining from like countries like Luxembourg, France, Canada, Morocco to a boarding school here in the US. So yeah, I interviewed them over Zoom and in person depending on where they were at. The why, I think this is the most interesting part of my project because like I learned from my soccer coach, Coach Coroli. I think that to do something like you need to have a why. And I think that is the most important part of my project because my why is like really meaningful. I'm really into psychology. I'm taking AP Psych now with Miss Taylor. And I really like getting to know why people do things and like why they feel, how they feel, and that was a really big part of my project, like I said before, getting to know like their feelings during the process. Also, I want to compare my own experience with their experience, because 2 years ago I decided that I needed to change my life. I was back in Spain and I wasn't really enjoying what I was doing, so I decided to come here to the US and it was a really big change for me. Moving from Spain, from a different culture to here to the US, so boarding school was a really big change in my life. So I wanted to compare like my experience and my feelings to their feelings and their experience. And also I wanted to provide an outside vision of the US. How I would do this, well, I asked everyone I interviewed to record an introduction video, telling them a little bit more about themselves, like who were they, where were they from, if they played any sports, hobbies, or things like that. Also, I asked them different questions like, why did they come to a boarding school at the US? How did the change of culture and country go? Because it's like there's a lot of difference between countries and like it could be hard or easy for them. How is the US culture different to the one in their countries? And their future goals and plans, if they're planning to study college here, if they want to go back to their country, if they just came for 1 year to live the experience and then leave. And then after all the interviews, I did like a little analysis of their answers to see if there were any similarities or differences depending on like, for example, like sex or where were they from, or you know. If you're wondering how an introduction video looks like, here's an example of Pauline and Luke from NMH.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Camille, j'ai 18 ans, c'est ma 4e année à North Carolina. Je suis née en Atlanta, Georgie et je suis un senior.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Luke, j'ai 18 ans, c'est ma 3e année à North Carolina. Je viens de Montréal, Québec et je joue au basket ici.
Here are the participants, everyone I interviewed. I wanted to mention them because they were a really big part of my project. A lot of people, when I reached out, they weren't willing to do the interviews, and I really appreciate them for doing the interviews and for sharing their feelings during the process. From the Wilson and Hampton School, JP from Canada, Rafael from Switzerland, and Daniela from Spain. From NMH, Camille from France, Luke from Montreal, and Pauline from Luxembourg, and lastly from the Kiste School, Xavier Marceau from Quebec. The interview. As I said, there were 2 types of interviews, over Zoom or in person. I think that the interviews in person were much better because I feel like when you're comfortable, it's easier to share your feelings, and when it was in person, like they were feeling more comfortable because it was like more personal. So that's why I really like the interviews in person. And here is an example of an interview I had with JP. There was a lot of back and forth in this interview, and here is a little example.
D'accord. Quels sont tes objectifs dans la vie? Comment est-ce que l'étudiant aux États-Unis va étudier?
J'ai des grands objectifs. Je voudrais étudier à l'université, je voudrais avoir une bonne job. Donc, étudier ici, ça m'aide à ouvrir toutes les portes et puis avoir toutes les options disponibles pour mon futur.
Donc, venir aux États-Unis, c'est partie d'une classe.
Oui, dans le fond, mon plan, ça fait quelques années que je pensais à venir ici. J'ai eu des personnes qui m'ont aidé pour venir ici parce que c'est pas toujours facile de trouver des contacts, mais le plan a bien fonctionné.
Like I said before, I did a little analysis after all the interviews, and I realized that there were a lot of similarities but not many differences, to be honest. When I asked them about their goals, they all said the same thing. They all said that they wanted to study college here at the US, that they wanted to improve their English, and especially they wanted to enjoy the experience. They were all like super focused on like getting into a really good school, getting good grades, like playing well, whatever sport they were playing, but they wanted to enjoy like these big things in their lives and like, you know, like enjoy basically being here at a boarding school. When I asked them about the transition, about the culture, they all say the same thing, that the boarding school communities like made it like super easy for all of them to get engaged with the community. So the transition was like really easy for all of them because there were like a lot of activities, a lot of things to do with the community that made it easier for them. And when I asked them about why they came to a boarding school, they all said that it was like much easier for them to get into college, coming first to a boarding school and then going to college, rather than going directly from like Switzerland, Morocco, or Canada directly to a US college.
La première question, tout le monde a dit la même chose. Ils ont dit que le boarding school et les États-Unis, c'est une façon d'améliorer l'anglais, de vivre une expérience différente et aussi c'est une plateforme pour le recrutement et pour aller à l'université ici aux États-Unis. La
Difficulties. This is one of my favorite parts of my project. This is where I think that my project is kind of different because I was really dependent on other people because some of my classmates, they did a wonderful project that they were like writing books, they were like doing novels or whatever they were doing, making videos. Like they were the ones that needed to do like the work like on their free time, but I was like really dependent on other people. So that makes my project a little bit different. And that was also like one of the difficulties because I didn't have a lot of time. I didn't know what I wanted to do at the beginning of the trimester. It took like probably like 3 weeks to figure out that I wanted to do like this interview to talk about the French culture, like the transitions and everything. And really at the beginning, I wanted to do like a podcast, but then the idea wasn't like really good enough for like a solid project. And I decided I wanted to do this, and that left me like with less than 2 months to do all the project, all the interviews and everything. Then I emailed all the boarding schools like Taft, Animate, Loomis, WMA, and they took like 2 weeks more or less to answer me, which then like 1 month to do all the interviews, all the editing and everything. Wasn't a lot of time. Also, some people, we were talking about doing the interviews and then they didn't show up for the interviews or they stopped answering because they realized that it was a lot of work. That's why I mentioned all these guys that did the interview before, because it was a lot of work for them as well, doing the introduction video, doing like a 10-minute interview. So yeah, those were some of my main difficulties, and also technology. I wasn't used to like do all that stuff, like editing a video, all the transitions and everything, and yeah. Some of the resources I used for my project were basically like YouTube videos, learning how to use the app for the editing, and learning how to do an interview. It's not easy to like get people to share their feelings and do a good interview, so that took a lot of time, and yeah, that's my project. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Yeah.
So finally, how does what they said compare to your experience?
Well, I feel the same way. I feel like the communities here at at least my first school here at Wilson, like they made my transition like really really easy because it's really to get to know new people, like you feel like part of the community since like the first day. So I really agree with everything they said. They said that they didn't miss like their homes and their culture, but I really missed it. I don't know why. That's something. They all said the same thing, but I'm kind of feeling that way. So.
And did they talk about culture shocks at all? Did you ask about that?
Yeah, I asked them about that and like kinda like they said they were pretty similar. What they said is that people here at the US are really like the main difference is that people here at the US are really like kind. They all said that. Like they were super kind and that was like really different from like their countries because people in Europe especially they are like really not rude but like you know if you walk past them like they're going to say hi or they're going to ask like how your day went and here at the US you haven't, so that was like the main difference. Yeah.
I think a similar question. Did you notice the difference between the North Americans, the Quebecois, and the Europeans, and how they responded?
Yeah, the people in Quebec, when they were asked about the culture, they said that it was like pretty similar, but there were obviously like some differences. Like for example, like people at the US are really kind, and that doesn't happen in Quebec or in Montreal or in Canada in general. So yeah, like they all said the same thing basically. Like the US is like well known, I guess, for like being super kind. Like, helping everyone. Yeah.
So you mentioned that that like in-person interviews people were able to be more like honest and like real kind of.
Yeah.
Do you feel like in your experience people like for example the animation they did feel like they kind of shied away from being like telling you as much of their story because like you didn't know them as well and it was online?
Well, I talked with them before doing the interviews, and I asked them to like be as honest as possible and to share their feelings as much as possible. So I feel like the people that did the interviews, they really like they were honest in what they were saying. That's why also this guy from Taft, like he didn't do the interview because he wasn't willing to share like all his feelings because he said that it was like way too personal. But he said that he didn't want to do the interview. So I feel like everyone treated those because like they were comfortable sharing their real feelings. Yeah.
I feel like it must have been really difficult to like get in touch with the other schools. Like, how did you do that?
I emailed admissions and the teachers. I did some research and I found like all their emails and I just emailed them. I did like a draft with like a general email like asking for their help and if they were interested in helping me. I emailed like over 8 boarding schools. 4 of them answered Taft, NMH, Kiski, that's it, 3. And the rest of them, either they didn't answer or the guy that answered at the end didn't end up doing the interview.
Okay,
Well,
no more questions.
thank you.
So